Hey everyone, this is Chris, and for today's episode of One Cross Radio, I am sharing a episode that I got to be a guest on the Henshin Men podcast. I was a guest with a friend of the show, frequent guest, awesome patron, and just all-around awesome fella, Nathan Marchand. This was Henshin Men episode 28, from back in January, and Nathan had me on to discuss the Chinese Tokusatsu film Super Inframan. And to Nathan and Travis, thank you guys so much for allowing me to share it in my feed this week. Everyone, I hope you enjoy. Hope you're being safe. Praying for y'all. Love y'all, and hope you enjoyed today's episode. God bless and enjoy. Peace.
Henshin.
Standing by. Complete.
Greetings, heroes of the internet. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Henshin Men, a podcast that celebrates Japanese superheroes and their high-flying and high-kicking adventures.
In this installment, we will be discussing the 1975 movie Super Inframan. Zhongguok Chuyang, the Devil Princess and her horde of monstrous minions awaken and set their sights on taking over the world, of course. Meanwhile, at the science headquarters, Professor Liu Ying Di transforms the heroic officer Li Ma into the kung fu super cyborg Inframan. He leads the charge against demonic hordes in a storm of psychotropic violence.
Hello again, heroes of the internet. As you obviously heard, Travis is still taking the rest of January off. He's got some things he needs to take care of because family comes first around here. So I am continuing
for you, bud.
Yeah. There you go. And that voice right there is my next guest here on the podcast. Coming on for the very first time, Chris Cooke, the host of, well, a couple of podcasts, but most notably One Cross Radio.
I believe if you see in the chat, my name for this episode is appropriately Christopherman.
Christopherman, yes. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show, because I've had you on my flagship show before, the Monster Island Film Vault.
And you've been on my show a couple times.
Yes. And I want to come on again. We have arrangements, but...
We do.
But anyway, I brought you on because you're one of... shall we say, my power gurus? You're a big fan of Power Rangers. We've had a lot of talks about Power Rangers. One of several friends I have talks about Power Rangers with. And I thought, you know what? I need some one-off Henshin episodes. What do? How about Super Inframan? Hey, Chris, you want to see Power Rangers on crack?
Which it's not that far off. It's not that far off of a description.
Yeah. Now, some of you might be out there listening thinking, hey, Super Inframan isn't Japanese. I thought this was a Japanese superhero show. Well, you know what? Without the Japanese superheroes, this movie wouldn't exist.
and quite frankly, neither would Power Rangers or the majority of what you talk about on your second spinoff.
Yes, the Power Trip. Yeah. Because I need I am a collector of podcasts. I must have more. Anyway, so yes. In fact, I actually went to it. This wasn't just a case of Ultraman and Kamen Rider and shows like that making their way over to Hong Kong, because this was made by the Shaw Brothers, who were known for making martial arts films, including, I might add, some of Bruce Lee's movies.
Did you see a Bruce Lee in the credits? I know it wasn't the man Bruce Lee.
It's not the Bruce Lee. It was a guy who starred in, this is an actual term, Bruceploitation movies. They passed him off as quote unquote Bruce Lee, but he's not Bruce Lee.
Well, he was Bruce Lee with one E. He was Bruce Lee.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. Yeah. Well, and he's not the only notable star. Our hero in this is played by Danny Lee, who is
dun, dun, dun.
Yep, who is he's not quite as popular as, say, your Chow Yun-fat or your Jackie Chan or your Bruce Lee, but he's a notable martial arts star. So there's a lot of talent actually behind this, including, like I said, not just because those shows were making him over there and they were popular. There are Japanese crew members who worked on this movie. I'm not kidding you.
I don't know why good, but good.
I'm going to now reference the handy dandy booklet that came with my DVD copy of this. Michio Mikami, who worked on a lot of Japanese tokusatsu, Rodan, the Mysterians. He worked on TV. He worked on Gamera. And he also worked on some tokusatsu TV, like Kamen Rider V3, which was the then current Kamen Rider series in 1975 when the movie was made.
All right. Well, that answers the Kamen Rider question I was about to ask. I was also about to ask which Gam were they working?
Oh, he worked on the original.
Okay, so Gam the Space Monster. I just like calling Gamera Gam. It's just fun.
Should have had you on for one of my Gamera episodes.
Well, we did the good ones together, and that's not a slight against Gam the Brave. That's a good movie as well. But we covered the three.
Yeah, and we all just to take the Japanese connections even deeper to continue to prove that this movie deserves to be on the show. It also had Tadashi Nishimoto, who was a Japanese cinematographer, and he worked on stuff like, I'm just looking at, I don't know a lot of these titles, admittedly, but he worked on stuff like Black Cat Mansion, The Ghosts of Yatsuya.
I'd argue to anybody who's like, I don't know if this deserves to be on the show. Homies, look up some pictures and tell me that it doesn't.
Yeah. Also, the composer, Toru Fuyuki, also composed for superhero shows like Ultra 7 and Mirror Man. In fact, they actually reused some of his music specifically from those shows in this movie. So, there are Japanese connections in this. It counts. Also, yes, you look at the design of the titular hero, and he is the gloriously insane love child of Kamen Rider and Ultraman.
Well, like everything about this show, this flick, like, I know we're going to get into it shortly, but there's a lot that we can take away from it. Like, be like this, and we'll get there, but it is absolutely like 100% an unapologetic love letter to Tokusatsu. I can't pronounce the word, but you get what I mean. Just like whenever I've been on my show and your show, I can't words. So Henshin listeners,
consider this practice to keep those podcast juices flowing, because I know you're looking to get a little bit of help with that. Another reason I'm glad I'm having you on today.
But yeah, it's like, it is. Yeah, the thing you can't take away from it at all is it's an absolute like love letter from the ground up. Now we can get into how good of a one it is, but it is an absolute love letter from the ground up, and you got to compliment it for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It is definitely made with love. And the funny thing is that this was, interestingly, I found out this is actually the first superhero movie ever made in China. Some might say, we can tell. But
well, Well, I was just more so thinking of just some of the jokes you and I have made before we start recording involving poster logos and everything.
Oh my gosh, yes. We have to talk about that because this movie has had a couple of alternate titles, and it also had some very interesting titles in some foreign markets. Good Lord. But at one point, it was unabashedly called Chinese Ultraman.
Wow.
And it was also called, in China, I might add. And it was also, as you can see in one of the posters, it was also called Chinese Superman.
Well, and it's that one. When I saw that logo and then the Shaw Brothers logo, I'm like, oh, this is already working against this for me.
Yeah, that was just weird.
Into?
That was just weird because you look at the poster, like I said, it's supposed to be the Shaw Brothers logo, but they style it to look like the Superman shield. And I'm like, was DC aware of this, or did they change it just enough that they can't get sued?
Probably that just enough tweak. Or you know what, it's also entirely possible that Warner Brothers had no idea what the heck was going on over.
Yeah, but I'm looking at some of the other just crazy titles. It's like if you start delving into alternate foreign titles for Tokusatsu and Kaiju, oh my gosh, it gets crazy. Or some of the programs that you would get in foreign markets would just say absolutely ridiculous things. But according to this, in Germany and Turkey, there were ad campaigns on the posters for this movie that said, from Jules Verne's best-selling novel, Super Inframan.
I'm actually legitimately disappointed that that's not prominently featured anywhere.
Just let that sink in, folks. Let it sink in.
While you're making ridiculous claims, you might as well, right? Like, from the mind of Stephen King comes Inframan.
Yep.
It's like, what? Well, there was a dude named Stephen King on set, not the Stephen King.
Not the Stephen King. Well, and then, like I said, what's funny is that they tried their hand at Toku Heroes. A few years later, they tried their hand at making kaiju. Mighty Peking, man. That is a thing that exists. Apparently, it's one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies.
Oh, Quentin.
I don't know if he's a mad genius or just mad.
Probably mad with splashes of genius. Let's go with that.
But yes. We need to actually get into the movie itself.
I was about to say, I've been skirting around something.
Yeah. Well, I should also mention that like I said, the design of Inframan, he very much looks like he has the big eyes like Ultraman, but then he has what looks like a helmet with little, not horns, I don't know, antennae, whatever. You know, it makes him look a bit more like a Kamen Rider. But then what's funny, like he has this kind of like a chest plate that comes out over his shoulders. I'm like, it's a dragon shield, isn't it?
But not even the good one. Not even the good one from the Sentai. We're talking the plush one, but in plastic form from Power Rangers.
But then he has moves and attacks that are clearly taken from both Kamen Rider and Ultraman. He does the lethal kick, which is like, it's the rider kick. Okay, come on. You just use 2 feet instead of 1.
Oh yeah, that and he keeps on, and he calls it the thunder kick or something.
No, it's the lethal kick, and then he has the thunder fists.
Right.
Which
right.
You know, there's a band name for it. Thunder Fist.
I mean, yeah. Heck, Lethal Kick by Thunder Fist. There's your album.
I am totally
thrash album.
I'm totally making that a meme.
Do it. You're welcome.
Lethal Kick by Thunder Fist. I love it.
Tell me that's not a Toku themed Japanese thrash metal album.
Oh, it totally is.
Exactly.
It totally is. And then we have the solar ray, which is the specie of Beep. Come on, you're not even trying. You even have him posing like Ultraman when he does it, okay? The only thing that is keeping this from just being like an asylum-style, just a mockbuster is the fact that it is so infused with pure, undiluted insanity.
Oh my goodness.
That, it's able to create a unique style all its own.
Well, and throughout the whole movie, because right off the bat, it kicks off with
it is bonkers right off the bat. Like, you have the credits, and the credits are actually, weirdly, a lot of the first act of the movie is pretty downplayed overall compared to what comes later. but the credits are pretty what you would expect. And then it starts off with kids in a bus and a teacher, and they're just singing a road song while they're driving at the end. Oh, look, baby Rodan.
I loved. So I looked away for like 30 seconds right off the start because I'm like, okay, the kids are singing. I look away for 30 seconds. I look back. Suddenly there's a giant crack in the ground. There's fire everywhere.
Yeah.
And the kids are starting to fall, and was like, what did I miss? Yeah. I looked away for like 10 seconds.
You missed baby Rodan just crashing, disappearing, causing an earthquake, and burning everything. Like, that's all the thing did. It just fell out of the sky, and then it literally vanished, and there was an earthquake, and the nearby city was lit on fire. I'm like,
well, yeah. Did the kids get out of the bus before it fell?
I don't know.
Because the bus fell, and then suddenly everything's on fire. I'm like, things escalated quickly.
Yeah.
The first 2 minutes, like, alone, it's a weird comparison because I was actually saying to my wife, because I had to do this over 2 viewings, actually, to be completely honest.
I know you were messaging me a little bit. All I saw was, dude, this is so bad.
And it was just like, I told my wife, and she was like, does it start fast? I'm like, fast doesn't describe it. Like, there's movies that hit the ground running, but you follow them, right? Like, it spells it even though it's moving quickly, it takes the time to establish things, lets you know what's going on. This does not.
It's actually not unlike traditional Japanese storytelling. If you watch any Japanese media, their philosophy is throw you into the thick of it and then explain everything.
Well, that's the thing, but where I'll give the advantage to the Japanese media over this is the Japanese media actually does do the explaining at some point. This just never gets to it.
No. In this one, there's one scene kind of early on where they're like, oh man, and we need to talk about the villain in this. Oh my goodness. So they said like, who is Elzebub? And it was like, well, because before that she said that I said that she was a demon. And then he's like, well, maybe they're a bunch of ancient humans who were buried under the earth many years, like millions of years ago. Like, just pick an origin, okay? And that's they never bring that up again other than in that scene. And any other time that they get brought up, they're demons. So I'm like, you know what? I think the movie's telling me they're demons.
Yep. Well, that's ended up what I took from it.
Oh, yeah. So it gives you some explain, and then they explain things like the whole thing with, was it the BDX program, which is where Inframan comes from. Now they don't explain what the science headquarters is, but I know what it's what inspired it, because it's the Science Patrol from any of the Ultraman shows.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I know what this is supposed to be because I'm genre savvy, but the movie doesn't really explain it. It's just like science headquarters. That tells me nothing, but okay.
So I'm not going to say I'm a friggin' Sentai regular, but I'm a dabbler. I've watched a fair number of Sentai based on Power Ranger seasons. I've been tweeting about them because they're just so much fun. But I find the difference is like there's a charm to it, and it's very similar with the absurdity. Like, it is absurd right off the bat. Like, okay, you're in a world where people are no selling the fact that a witch is coming from space in a palace above like above the ground, and barely anybody's batting an eye to it. They're just like, oh, okay, man, here we go, Tuesday. But
welcome to Japan. But
exactly. But I do find like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because of my connection to those from the other shows, where I'm just like, I find with them, they do a little bit more of the lifting as the thing goes, instead of just like, hey, it's Inframan. I'm like, how does anybody know who he is? He just got made.
I know. The way I've explained,
like, what?
Because I like showing this movie to people just to watch them lose their minds. But because I have a couple of friends who are really into MST3K, and I like MST3K too. And one of the ways that I became aware of this was Joel Hodgson, the creator of MST3K, loves this movie. He has wanted it on the show basically since it started. But for some odd reason, they've never had it on the show. And if you watch the Netflix seasons of MST3K, the Mads in that one, the mad scientist, it's a woman in the Netflix series, and she has henchmen called the Skeleton Crew, and they're modeled after the, what do they call it? She called them Skeleton Warriors, not to be confused with a semi-obscure 90s cartoon.
Nope.
And I'm looking at that, I was like, oh, I understand what those are now. Those are the Shocker Goons from Kamen Rider who dress like luchadors. So there you go. It's so I can connect it all back, dang it. So I know what it's going for. In a lot of ways, it's almost like, you're talking about how this is this massive homage. It's almost like wandering into a comic shop and finding some one-off comic book that is most definite, like a one-shot indie comic book that is this massive homage to Marvel and DC, because it cherry picks some things from different Marvel and DC characters and kind of throws them together into this mad hodgepodge.
Yeah.
But
it's like, and I will give it credit. Like, it's not. I just found I was like, maybe a little Sentai goes a long way. That's what I was feeling with it when I don't have that connection, like with Power Rangers, or as I've been making my way through the Japanese Spider-Man show, where it is equally, I'd say equally as bonkers, because Sentai is just bonkers. A lot of Japanese media, I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school. No,
you're talking to
bonkers.
somebody who's 40 plus episodes deep into the original Kamen Rider. I have seen things, man.
Well, it's still like my favorite quote, and I've brought it up numerous times with you, but I think it illustrates it for Godzilla, but also for just Japanese media and Tokusatsu in general, where it's like, after absorbing a dead pterodactyl soul,
from Death Battle, yeah, you learn to go along with it. I mean, like I said, the movie starts off bonkers, and then it just gets exponentially more and more. Like I said, that first act is relatively tame, and then it's just like, are we done with anything resembling exposition? Oh, we're going to 15.
Well, yeah, it's basically like the last like 40 minutes of the movie is like a fight.
It feels like it. It's actually the last 20, but
right. Well, from the point Inframan shows up.
Yeah, basically. But early on, we got things like we see the science headquarters that has flashing Tetris blocks on up on the top of their walls, and I don't know why. And there's a small collection of rainbow disco balls. I don't know what those do, but they're there.
I was expecting to see an old school Zillion in the background with the black line over his eyes.
Oh, the glasses. The glasses.
He would have the glasses. He would have fit right in with this with the science crew.
Yeah, but let me tell you, I've been watching some 70s Ultraman. That very much looks like an Ultraman set. It really looks like an Ultraman set. It is. Oh man, but then we've already talked about the Skeleton Warriors.
Yep.
Now we need to talk about our main villains, the original Rita Repulsa / Bandora, Princess Elzebub, or as her name is rendered in some translations, no joke, Princess Dragon Mom. You know what? I think I'm going to go with Elzebub because she's supposed to be a demon, and it's derived from Beelzebub.
Yep. No, I'm with you. She was a world-conquering demoness or a 20 million year old human. We're not 100% sure. The movie isn't 100% sure.
Except I think it's more with the demon part.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is. Like a lot supports it, but they still put it out there and they didn't retract it.
Whatever. Like, right, so yeah, they're all. I guess. Let's just make sure that we have very clear-cut villains, and they are 150% evil. Okay, so it's like, oh, they're demons. Yeah, there's no coming back from that. They're demons. Oh, like, okay, that is as much character development as we need. You know, it's kind of like I've heard some people. I think it was a TV tropes thing on that website where they said that there are a handful of villain archetypes where all you have to do is say such and such villain is this, and you don't have to explain why they're evil. Case in point, Nazis. Don't have to explain why Nazis are evil. Vampires. Don't have to explain why vampires are evil. It's, demons. Don't have to explain why they're evil.
Oh, there's so many jokes we could. Anyways.
Just keep it PG, okay?
Oh, yeah. No.
But no, yes. Oh, my gosh.
Because we're online so much.
She let's just say Princess Elzebub is... She just screams, "Yas, Queen." She's got a big horned helmet.
She does.
A bra that calls to mind a Christmas story. You'll put your eye out.
Yeah.
A whip. Like, she whips people.
When I first saw her, I was like, okay, I guess we're going for this is less of a children's movie now. We're kind of getting semi-BDSM-y.
Come on. Like, Rita's outfit was 100% child appropriate.
I'm not gonna. Well, I can't think of anything child inappropriate about it. Not that I saw
the conical bra. Really?
Maybe it's because of the giant horned hat made with hair.
I never noticed the ridiculous bra until later either.
There's so
that
much.
Her headdress just calls so much attention to itself.
There's so much going on with Rita and her big bellowy dressy outfit and everything that you're gonna miss some stuff. With Elzebub, you're just like, okay, no, there's not much here.
Oh well,
not much in the terms of character development or
and then to fit the Sentai archetypes, so we have the villain, and that we have the boss, that's what they're called, and then we have the general. So her Goldar is Witch Eye, who has even less on.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that she's called quote unquote Witch Eye, so you expect her to use magic? Nope. She has the mind probing tech from that Star Trek episode Dagger of the Mind. She screws with people's heads. I'm like, why is your name Witch Eye and you use tech?
I don't know, man.
But then I remind myself, this is Super Inframan.
Well, there's certain ones where you'll just roll with it. Like in Japanese Spider-Man, the villain's name, and listeners, if you haven't watched the show, I challenge you to, because it's an utter delight. The villain's name is Professor Monster.
In its defense, Kamen Rider has a villain who, depending on the translation, his name in Japanese is Dr. Shinigami, which means it gets rendered as either Dr. Reaper or Dr. Death. So...
Well, Dr. Death just works. It's been the name of how many villains and wrestlers?
So the fact that we're talking about this, another Ultraman connection, when we're talking about all of these demons. Oh, by the way, I refer in my notes, I call Witch Eye the hottest disco space nun harlot. Because that's a joke on my show. I call the Keylocks from Destroy All Monsters the disco space nuns.
Okay.
But when Inframan is made, he's in a crucifix pose, so I guess it's visually communicating to us, here's your hero who's going to fight the demons.
Yeah. Not big on subtlety. Great on kung fu action.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was going to say earlier, the way I described this movie to the uninitiated is that it's competently made insanity. Because it's shot well. It's got, actually, to be honest, it's got a heck of a lot of production value. It does. It's got a heck of a lot of production value. It's got great fight choreography. The effects for the time are actually pretty decent. The acting is pretty decent. The script is just complete and utter crazy nonsense. That is the biggest problem it has. The script is crazy nonsense. That's it. If you get over that fact, it's a heck of a ride.
I think this is a good place to talk about it. It took me a while to get into the movie beyond just the man, this is bad part, where I could get like, okay, this is bad, but I'm getting past the hurdles where I can enjoy. For me, for a while, the thing to get around was, now this is going to sound like an insult, and I don't want it to be. So I'm just going to clarify that it's not intended to be. But the fight choreography is really, really well done. But I found in this one, in comparison to, say, Super Sentai or some other ones where there's more people and they have handheld weapons and stuff, there's more to the fights than just kicks. Like well choreographed kicks, but there's a lot more traction in the fights. So it took me a while to get into the fights where I'm like, we're just kicking. We're just flipping and we're just kicking. Get a sword or something.
Inframan doesn't need a sword. What are you?
No, he's got sunbeams and thunder kicks.
Solar ray.
But then the other thing that I realized early in that was taking me a while to get into it was I was watching something where I'm like, this is Tokusatsu. I'm watching Tokusatsu, but this isn't Japanese. Like everybody's, because it's a Chinese film, everybody's speaking Chinese. And I was like, it took me a little bit to get used to that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the language is different.
Yeah. I hear the dub for this. I haven't watched it dubbed yet. I hear the dub is hysterical.
Well, I'm just picturing this, which is already bonkers by itself. But imagine this with the same love and affection that the Showa Godzillas got their English dubs.
I'm curious to watch this dubbed. I'm glad I have the DVD copy of this. Oh, man. But, I mean, come on. Our villains, the entrance to their lair, we were talking about thrash metal. Come on. The entrance to their evil lair is
dope.
Dragon head. That is metal right there. That is the textbook definition of metal. It's a cave that is a dragon head, and it even spews smoke sometimes. This whole movie is just. This is like thrash metal made into a tokusatsu movie. That's what this is.
I think that's fair. And you can compare it to thrash metal in the sense of that thrash is like, hey, we're going to do an insane song in about 3 to 6 minutes.
Yeah, basically.
We're just going to hit the ground running.
But now, so we've talked about our main villains. We talked about the goons. Now we got to talk about the monsters. We actually have
There's a number.
There's a whole treasure trove of monsters here. Unfortunately, in the subtitles, they just translate their names literally, so they don't sound all that impressive. So, because our first two are Mutant Drill, which sounds kind of okay, and then Plant Monster.
Plant Monster.
I'm like, that sounds cooler in Chinese, doesn't it? But they're nuts. A Plant Monster is basically Biolante before Biolante, and burrow, like he plants himself into the ground and then goes all tentacly on the science headquarters while our professor is trying to finish making Inframan. And with a cameo by Luna, because no Chris Cooke podcast would be complete without a cameo by his dog Luna.
Absolutely. She's the perpetual co-host and is now demanding love and attention.
Of course she is. But anyway, and I love they have such great priorities because they're calling it to the professor and they're trying to say, oh my gosh, we're under attack. What are we doing? What's the first thing he's thinking about? Oh, keep the power on so I can keep Rayma, it apparently has a couple different names, alive. Gotcha. Priorities. I guess
never mind everybody else.
Yeah, but I guess his thinking is, well, if I keep him alive and he becomes Inframan, he'll save everybody. But that Plant Monster attack scene is crazy.
Yeah. No, that was one where I was like, all right, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm here for it. It was one of the ones where it took me from I have no idea what's going on and I'm annoyed by it to like, all right, I'm here for this.
Yep.
This is weird as hell.
Yeah, basically. Well, I mean, what was really weird is I wrote down in my notes right before the professor finishes making Inframan and we're supposed to be seeing all the cyborg parts that are underneath his skin. And I'm just like, so it's GIF-borg because those are GIFs.
Oh, man.
And then once Inframan shows up, we get a whole heck of a lot of a catchphrase that you coined on my show, and I have been using it ever since, and I'm going to start using it more and more on the air. Unnecessary backflips.
So many unnecessary, not just backflips, all the flips.
All the flips.
90, like any conceivable flip. Maybe 2 were necessary the entire movie.
I mean, there's even a point where Super Inframan gets to the entrance to the evil lair and he says, you know what? Walking, I'm too good for that. Running, still too good for that. When I enter an evil lair, I'm just gonna backflip my way into it repeatedly.
And not only does he backflip into it, he backflips into a sudden capture cage that we don't even see laying for him. It's just, he goes in and suddenly he's captured.
So it's like, congratulations, you had the coolest entrance ever, and then magically got caught in off screen. Nice job, Inframan. Nice job.
Not even like the good off screen where you come back and Squirrel Girls defeated Thanos and you're like, what? Not even that kind of good off screen. You're just like, wait, what? He was backflipping.
Oh my gosh. And then they decide, oh, let's throw in a brainwashed traitor complete with the evil eyeshadow, because that's how you know. If Kamen Rider has taught me nothing, it's that if your friends suddenly have eyeshadow, they're being mind controlled by your nemesis.
Well, yeah, almost as soon as you saw him, because I think you saw him more than once. But around the second time, you're just like, okay, yeah, he's going to get brainwashed or something. And then when he does, you're just like, man, is anybody going to ask him how he's feeling? He looks like he's ill.
I know. Nobody thinks of it. He sneaks into the base and he does that weird death glare on a guy. And I'm like, did he just kill him by looking at him? No. Later on, I'm like, were you just playing possum the whole time? Because the guy walks in and he's just lying on the floor and he just casually says, over there. You know?
It was bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm still trying to figure out is how the heck did this company get the door opening sound effects from Toho? Because those were Toho sound effects, man. I've seen enough Toho movies to know Toho sound effects. And I'm like, those, I want the, where did you get these door sound effects? Because I want them.
Well, I mean, we've seen the slightly off-kilter logo that avoided copyright infringement law. Maybe they got a slight.
Apparently, they stole the door sound effects, but they didn't steal any kaiju roars, which is a little surprising.
Actually, I feel like that's a good moment to talk about the sound.
This is very 1970s chop-socky martial arts sound effects.
The sound when like Inframan made. At points I wanted to mute, man. I was just like, I can't do this. This is too high pitched. Like,
while he's doing his Kamen Rider jumps, because good Lord, you could tell that they had a cinematographer that worked on Japanese Tokusatsu, because it's like, yep, those are Kamen Rider shots right there.
Especially when and it happened more than once, and it's not like where it's, say, Sentai or something, or Japanese Spider-Man, where they're just looping footage to fill up a runtime. It was just like, hey, no, we're going to show him jumping and flipping from 3 different angles unnecessarily entirely. And each time we're going to get that like very high-pitched noise.
Yeah. And then more monsters. There's like I said, there's a whole troop of monsters, and we start getting more monsters. We have this, my personal favorite, I forget what his name is, but he's this big red bug. I just called him Red Bug because I can't remember his name.
I called him Lobby.
Oh, why Lobby?
A lobster, but he made me think of one.
He does kind of look a bit like a lobster, but he's a bug, and he can inexplicably grow giant because somebody saw Godzilla versus Megalon and thought, spontaneous size changing robot. Oh, we got one better for you. And then we also
didn't he even yell like, make
giant
me bigger,
form,
giant form.
Yes,
and then Inframan does it,
and then Inframan he totally does it Ultraman style. Okay, because he's got like the one fist up and he's growing. I'm just like, oh my gosh, and then he never does it again.
Yeah, no. And
we get a kaiju sequence in this.
Yep.
And it lasts for maybe a minute, and then Inframan never does it again. He just didn't. He's Golden Age Superman. He just invents superpowers.
Well, yeah. But at least, like, I don't know. Superman punched a planet and dragged a galaxy. Stuff like that was weird, but visually impressive. Inframan going giant once and then never doing it again. I'm like, what? Where did you go giant at the end? Just step on everybody.
Well, that's what he does. He beats up the bug guy a little bit, throws him into, I'm guessing it's some sort of a factory, so collateral damage be danged. And and then he shrinks, and then he just squishes him like a literal bug.
Yep.
What is this movie? And then before that, when he was going for a swim and fighting monsters, jumping and goons jumping from that tiny mountain and things like that, we had evil Sweetums.
Yep.
It was like some crazy voodoo dancer guy with long, crazy hair. I was just like, what are you?
Which was it, the plant monster that was shooting him when he was in that really, really shallow looking pond where I'm like, there's no way you can get underwater here. I can see the red from your suit at the top of the water, but I'm supposed to believe that the plant guy can't see it?
I don't know. And then there's a DBZ style beam battle between Inframan and one of the monsters.
And not even a good DBZ beam battle.
And then we start getting a little bit confusing later on, because then they started calling, and the first time I watched this movie, I live tweeted on the Monster Island Film Vault Twitter. And there's a point where they start referring to him as the quote unquote Chinese Inframan. I'm like, what? Are there other Inframen? in other countries? What? And now I'm just like, I want to see this now. I mean, what would Inframen from other countries be like? You imagine like Russian Inframan. He would have the complete opposite weakness. You know, he'd be like, I am a Russian Inframan. I live in Siberia. Ice does not bother me.
He does.
Canadian, you're from Canada. Canadian Inframan would laugh at the cold too. So
it's true. It's true. He would. His weakness would be Tim Hortons, unfortunately.
And he would be a hockey player.
Yeah,
because the joke goes that Canada has the best resource for hockey, Canadians.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. Oh my gosh, Luna is just going crazy.
And obviously the Austrian Inframan would be played by Arnold.
Oh, it had to be. It would have
to be Inframan.
Okay, now I'll be honest. I'm actually now getting angry at this movie for not being any of these better ones that we are pitching.
Oh man, I want to start doing that. Like it's like the Infra League. It's just Inframen all over the place. I mean, there's even talk from they have names. I think I have their names down here someplace, but I just called them the Infra Kennys because halfway through the movie we get Kennys.
Is that all the science people?
No, the kids.
Oh, okay.
The Infra Kennys.
All the science people who inexplicably but awesomely know kung fu for the final 20-minute fight. Yeah. Where I'm just like, how are you guys excellent marksmen? And
I don't know if they're supposed to be scientists. Like, it's called Science Headquarters, but I think they're supposed to be some sort of like science-based military unit.
I just never took them as a military.
Well, it's like I said, I've seen Ultraman. I know it's supposed to be the Science Patrol. Right. So yeah, but anyway, so we have the Infra Kennys, and one of them is like, what about Infra Woman? I'm like, well, there's some sequel baiting if there ever was any, and unfortunately it never happened because I'm like, I want Infra Woman. Someone make Infra Woman. I will watch it.
If you were to make this now, if you were like Nathan, if you were going to tell me right now that Inframan was being made as a legit tokusatsu, dang it, you get the words.
Tokusatsu.
I just can't words, Captain. Like if that was legit going to be made as a show right now, I'd be all for it. And actually because I know we're getting nearer to the end of the movie, something I'll say is I found with this, I honestly think it would have benefited from being a standard Toku show over just a movie. Because a little Toku goes a long way, or a little Sentai goes a long way. Uh-huh. And if it had the chance to kind of do what Sentai or other Tokusatsu shows do, where it's like, yeah, they hit the ground running, but then they pause and explain every once in a while, I could have gotten in a lot more. And I see how this could be an outstanding show. Mm. Anyways.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. I think it's about 88 minutes or so. Let me check my DVD here. It's
an hour and 24. I watched it on the good old internet.
Okay, well, this says it's 90 minutes, but I think that might be a little off. But it's about 90 minutes of just pure, undiluted Toku insanity. And it might be a little much for some people.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I've been watching so much Toku and Sentai lately that I was like, oh yeah, this will be fine. Like 20 minutes in, I'm just like, bruh, I gotta pause.
It's too much. It's too much.
I have no idea what's going on. And not in a good way.
It moves very briskly, and it's just nuts. There's so much that we're kind of skipping over a fair amount of stuff for the sake of time, but there's so much that we could point to and just be like, oh my gosh, look at this, I love how they figure out that, well, okay, so Inframan, we could talk about this briefly. I know the awards, we're going to get into it a little bit more. But Inframan apparently, for as powerful as he has two weaknesses. One is a cloudy day.
Yep.
because his solar ray doesn't work without sun. So because the villains are like, hey, how about we cause an artificial eclipse? That'll be great. Fill the sky with black clouds so there's no sunlight. Can't use his death ray. Okay. And we find out that he's immune to all the elements except ice.
Yep. Except the glacier.
The glacier.
We gotta make it sound epic.
Yeah, the glacier. When really what we're talking about here is ice to meet you. All right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, everything except that. Like I said, Russian and Canadian Inframan, not a problem.
Yeah.
You drop them in Hawaii, they might literally melt, but but then we find out he has another move, the laser blades, which cut very clean, and they're like lightsabers. They cauterize.
Oh, well, we should set this up. We learn he has these when he kills Witch Eye. Earlier, they establish, as any good villain in the 70s does, there's a trapdoor that leads to something, be it sharks or fire, or in this case, a pool of lava.
Yes, because we took the mind control dude, and they just decide, you're suddenly useless.
Yeah. It was the moment where as soon as she called him and they had the other two people there, I was like, oh, they're going to kill him to show them that they mean business. And sure enough, 2 seconds later, he is dropping down in the lava. And I'm like,
and then they try
to him.
Yep. And then they try to do it to Inframan, and he manages to get out.
And then he kills Witch Eye with his disc laser beam things.
Yeah, laser blade.
Laser blades, which should be a track on this
on the thrash album. Laser blade. And then we have to have a track that's called something like 5 decapitations, because that's what it takes to kill Princess Elzebub. You get to the final boss fight, and like a video game final boss, she can't fight on her own. She has to send a bunch of minions, and then you have to fight the minions, and then fight the boss. And then we find out the baby Rodan we saw at the beginning, apparently that was her.
Well, I also had to rewind because I, again, looked away for 2 seconds because as I was watching it, Luna suddenly made some noise. So I was like, what's up? And I looked it was Princess Elzebub to suddenly this little pterodactyl thing. I was like, wait, what? Where'd she go? Did she run away? So I just watched the end of the movie. I was like, wait, what the hell? And I had to rewind back. And they don't even make a big thing of it. It's just 1 second she's there, then she transforms. Yep.
It's they don't bother with this isn't even my final form. Yeah, they don't. It's just poof. I'm a demon pterodactyl. There's the band that they're going to tour with, Demon Pterodactyl.
Exactly. And then you need to cut my head off 5 times and then shoot me with a bunch of explosives and basically disintegrate me.
Yeah, because she regrows her head, and you could see the annoyance on Inframan, even with that helmet, because he's like, pew, with laser blade. The head comes off, grows back. He's like, oh. Right, come on. He does it again. Come on. He just keeps doing it.
There had been a couple other times in the movie where he had done stuff similar, like where he kept knocking the guy down and he just bounced back up. So he knocked him down and he bounced back up. But it seemed like Inframan was having fun. Or when he lawn darted the dude who bounced up some stairs on the top of his head. Inframan seemed to have some fun with that.
Or when he tied up the twin King Joes from Ultra 7 with their slinky hands.
Right.
Their slinky mace fists, He just tied them up.
And then the movie just kind of there's no celebration. He saves the main scientist guy, who I'm going to call Professor Scientist,
and his daughter, the token pretty daughter, and
the token pretty daughter scientist, TM. So he's just trademarking as I go. So he goes ahead and saves them, and then they leave the lair as everything just keeps blowing up. Like, this movie did not skimp on its, you could say it skimped on some other special effects elements, but where it didn't skimp was its explosion budget, because things just kept blowing up at the end.
I have zero doubt in my mind that both Guillermo del Toro and Michael Bay watched this movie as a kid, because Witch Eye literally has eyes on the palms of her hands and they shoot lasers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a monster in Pan's Labyrinth that does that.
But this seems like something that's absolutely up Guillermo's.
Dude, can you imagine Guillermo del Toro remaking Super Inframan now?
Yeah, no, seriously, that's just what I was thinking. I was like, now I'm upset that we're not watching that movie.
Oh, I want an Inframan remake directed by del Toro. It would be glorious.
Well, seriously, because he could take what's there, like. You could easily compare this to Pacific Rim. There we go. Yeah. Just without some of the interference stuff, where it seemed like he lost a little bit of his passion along the way. When you hear some of the behind the scenes stories with that one, but if he could keep that zeal the whole way through, he would rock the crap out of this.
And
man.
He loves Tokusatsu. He
Big time.
Loves Tokusatsu. Oh my gosh.
Big time.
Oh my gosh. I'm pitching it right now. Inframan remake.
I'm actually now really upset that we haven't had a proper kaiju. Well, okay, not saying Pacific Rim doesn't count as a kaiju movie. You get what I mean. But could you imagine like a serious Godzilla or Heisei era Gamera movie, but done by Del Toro?
It would be amazing.
It lines up perfectly.
Yeah,
I'm now angry that we don't have that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But you know what we can do to cheer you up? Go to the awards. Go to the awards, starting with the trademark Henshin Men Awards. And yes, Michael, I know you're listening. I know you think the Power Trip perfected it. We'll go with Stole instead. Anyway. I love you, buddy. Anyway, starting with Henshin Kick for the best stunt or fight scene. As the guest, Chris, I'm going to let you go first.
So you know what? I might go with. I kind of do want it's. You could honestly say the entire last like 20-30 minutes. I know it's different scenes, but they all like there's a bunch of fights just blending together.
It's nonstop. There's almost it just doesn't let up. It just goes.
So I'll narrow it down to it's within the last 20 minutes, but when it's when he shows up to Dragon Mountain base thing, TM, where all the Skeletors,
there's another track on the album. He's like, all my Skeletors.
All my Skeletors. I'm putting it as I could be really mean to the movie, and I don't want to be. It's just funny.
Oh, there you are, Inframan.
It works, right?
We're going to get you, Inframan.
That when all the skeleton warriors came out and it was just him versus them, and then as slowly more and more came out, and then the monsters started coming out, that whole thing, the choreography was on point. There was also weapons involved, so that helped it not just be punch, kick, unnecessary flip.
These are the lyrics for the thrash album.
Exactly. We're writing this right now. And it did have a nice sense of escalation, where even there was a moment where Inframan, who's nothing in this movie has ever made you feel like this dude is going to lose, he almost did a pause and a shrug, just like, oh, all right. Just
well, I mean, he doesn't even, quote unquote, morph or henshin, and he does have, like any good henshin hero, he's got a catchphrase and a henshin dance.
Well, and that's the thing also, like he
doesn't even bother. He has to be accosted by two monsters at the same time before he's like, okay, maybe I should now.
And then that was where I was most dialed in on the movie, where I'm like, you know what? Everything in here is like copacetic right now. And it worked as a really good, the movie is so full of good fight scenes, but that one I was like, you're trying to tell me in the story of the fight as well, like there's a sense of escalation and you're actually doing it. It's not just a bus fell off a hill, but suddenly the entire city is in flames. Like, how much gas was in this bus?
I think the idea was that it was an earthquake that did that. Although that felt very Toho-esque there at the beginning. I even said like, they lit the Godzilla set on fire, you know?
Yeah.
And we get it also, if you want to call it a plot, it plays into the plot because I think we see our hero actually saving people from the from the fire and everything. So we're like, okay, so we know he's a good guy. So so you want to show your hero being heroic before he becomes the hero. So
yeah.
No, good. That's what you do with a good superhero origin story. Is this a good superhero origin story? Well, maybe if you doused it in a bunch of crack, but
if you slowed it down to splitting this over 4 or 5 episodes and then are 20 minutes each,
when it doesn't quite feel like it's drowning in caffeine.
I don't think it's caffeine that does that to you, man. Magic morning wake-up juice doesn't get you that jacked.
Indeed, yeah. Mine goes to, I just wrote, the last 20 minutes is nonstop superhero insanity. I couldn't pick one. It's just when I thought, I should use that one. I should use that one. It's just like every minute of that last 20 minutes was worthy of the award. And there were points before that where I thought that might be worthy of the award. So I'm like, just screw it. It's just the last 20 minutes.
Well, I think that this movie being exactly what it is, which, listener, I do want to say, like, as much as it sounds like I'm being very negative on it, there are aspects I did enjoy. It's not one I'm going to want to watch anytime soon. But
you got to be in the right mood for this one.
Yes, let's go with that.
All right.
It's not the kind of toku I can just throw on and be like, all right, I'm here. Let's do this. All right, so I think we've got another award coming up. Is that correct?
Yes, we have 4 of them, actually. So our next one is Takatoku for the best special effect. What was your nominee?
Oh, man. This is a... I was about to say, like, this is challenging, and it's going to sound like an unintentional burn. Because I'll say, like, as much as the movie did have good special effects, there are also moments of bad special effects. I do think, you know what, I'll say it. It's the destruction, no matter how unending it was, but the destruction of the Dragon Cave Crystal layer thing of evil TM. Like, as that kept exploding,
yes.
It might not have made sense that it kept exploding, but the explosion effects were really, really well done. And there were some other moments, like, I mean, you're in a, like, even in a high budget non-Chinese movie in the 70s, somebody falling into fire is not going to look good, but they made the falling into lava look pretty decent, so that one stood out as well.
Okay,
I was like, oh snap, that was cool too.
Oh, well, there you go. Mine was the Ultraman sequence.
Yep.
And one of the things I forgot to mention, I can't believe I forgot to mention, but when I watched it the second time for this podcast, I said, well, he poses like Ultraman and grows like Ultraman. If you pay close attention, you even hear the Ultraman Henshin sound. You know, the same sound that I play before Minute to Henshin it, you hear him do it.
They were going for it.
They went for it. And then, and then it ends with him squishing the red bug, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's the only thing like that we see for the whole movie. It is the only kaiju / giant hero sequence. I mean, it just begs, why don't you do it again? You could have grown large and kicked the dragon lair of evil TM, but he had to save some people from it. So
Oh man, we need to do this more so we can just trademark everything.
Trademark everything. Yeah.
TM.
Yeah, TM. And then moving on to our next award, coming at you, TM. For the best line. And now I will admit, as bonkers as this movie is, the dialogue is strangely not quite as crazy. That might be my one big black mark. I was like, can you give me zanier lines, please? I don't know. Maybe it's just a difference in sensibilities because, having watched a lot of Kamen Rider and Ultraman, both for this podcast and otherwise, the Japanese seem to take a little bit more of I guess one of the American sensibilities of give your heroes snappy one-liners. Yeah. Not in this one. Inframan is not a quippy guy.
No. He's a very silent fellow.
Yeah. He prefers to let his actions speak for him. And by actions, I mean punching, kicking, laser blading, and nonstop
unnecessary backflipping. Yes. But without the charm that you get of the backflipping sound effects from Power Rangers, where their arms make whooshing noises. You're like, it's nonsensical, but it's charming.
I like to think that it's because it's the 70s and no one had thought to do that yet.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I'll be honest. I kind of have the same moment that this line is from is actually in my next award. So I'm just going to provide the line and then I'll provide the context when we get to the next award.
Okay.
But my best line, and I'm putting it in quotations because for me it's one of those moments in the movie, and we'll get to it in the next award. So the line is, and I know it's not correct, I just couldn't find the absolute correct one.
It's close enough.
Was you can withstand the sun, the earth, and the air, but you cannot withstand the glacier.
Yes. Because Elzebub is trying to get Professor Scientist and Token Pretty Daughter, get him to do stuff because of Token Pretty Daughter. So he kept saying no, and then she shoved them both into basically an ice prison and said, "You're going to freeze to death in 3 days." I'm like, why only 3 days? Why 3 days? That hardly adds any suspense.
Professor Scientist. This has been a win. I feel proud.
Yes. And then we find out, that's one of his weaknesses. And I'm like, well, ice is your kryptonite. So does that mean you never put ice in your drinks? Is it because that's your kryptonite?
I don't know if anybody knows because the character is like 30 minutes old.
Basically.
Sorry, I'm giving a preview of
the next one. Yeah.
I'll bite my tongue.
Yeah, my award, her real name is actually Lin, and every time I watch it, actually the first time I watched this movie and I saw this kid, I'm like, are you a boy or a girl? Because I can't tell. But it's Lin, it's a girl. And I hinted at it before, and she's talking to Token Pretty Daughter, TM, and she says, "Sister May, is there an Infrawoman? I wish I was an Infrawoman." I'm like, sequel baiting, and we're not getting it because this movie, weirdly enough, despite becoming a cult classic, didn't succeed at the box office.
I'm not sure I find that weird.
Yeah, but in my notes I refer to her as Infra Kendra because she's a female Kenny. So Kendra.
And I appreciate that.
Yes.
Although because you have the character's name Lin, now in these many offshoots we are pitching, I nominate that we change Lin to a man. Not to sex swap, but so we can cast Lin-Manuel, whatever his last name is, the dude from Hamilton, who also writes awesome Disney songs for Moana. Tell me he wouldn't be great. You can't, because he would be.
Oh man, if I wanted to do an extended version of this episode, I would totally just want to sit here and just cast all of these characters in the Guillermo del Toro remake because it would be amazing.
Oh, seriously. and we're getting Lin in this. I don't care. He'd be amazing.
Lin. Well, and then they call Token pretty daughter. They call her May May at some point too. I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm a terrible, dirty American for thinking this is funny. Anyway, moving on to one of my favorite awards, and oh my gosh, the most appropriate award for this movie, WTH, What the Henshin, for the craziest moment. Let's go with yours. I have.
All right.
Because... yeah.
So this for me is the same one as the best line. The reason that I have that as my best line is, frankly, it's one of the few that I can remember. And again, I know that sounds like a smack against the movie, but the movie wasn't going for memorable dialogue. It wasn't going for like trash talk or anything. It was like, hey, it was a very kung fu love letter to Toku. So that it succeeded in good dialogue.
Well, I mean, at this point, Japanese Tokusatsu was borrowing from kung fu films. So
yeah, no, well, exactly. It's a scratch your back, scratch my, I don't know, analogy TM. So the reason that line counts as my craziest moment is it was a couple of times throughout the movie, I just kind of look and I just be like, how does anybody know that? Like, how do you know? But that line where she sets him up, so he's in the Dragon Den Cave of Evil TM, and within that there's another Dragon Den Cave of Evil TM, like a mini within it. So she gets Inframan to fly in, and then he comes out as a block of ice. And that's where she drops like the dime of like, you can withstand the sun, the earth, and the air, but you cannot withstand the glacier. And I paused the movie, Nathan. Just like, how the henshin do you know that? How does anybody know anything about this character? He is 30 minutes old. I'm not even sure if a day has passed in this movie's timeline. How he doesn't even know his weaknesses. How do you know his weaknesses? He was just created.
So what you're saying is, after everything else, this was the breaking point. I was going to say, that was the moment that broke you.
Like, I had done my pauses. I had taken my breaks. And I was like, all right, I know what this is. I can roll with this. And this stopped the roll. Like, I was inframanning, backflipping, like whatever noise repeatedly, and then this was a banana peel that made me slip right into the side of Dragon Lair Mountain TM. Like, I'm just like, it took me out. I was so annoyed by it. I'm just like, I don't understand. If you don't give me a reason to care, I can't care. And you're telling me I shouldn't care because there's no way this person should know.
Like I said, the biggest black mark this movie has is that the script is insane nonsense. Everything else is actually really good. The script is insane nonsense.
Yeah. Yep.
They got the best of everything except screenwriters, I guess. Or the screenwriter was on a heck of a lot of drugs. It's the 70s. He probably was. So
yeah, it's just something. Like, they're doing a test at the center, and Spyerson, whose name I can't remember,
zoom in, I think.
Zoom in the brainwash TM. Like, if they saw them doing tests and then they saw the suit react to cold or something, sure, it makes sense. How easy is it to put that in there? But they didn't even have.
Oh my
zoom
gosh.
in, see anything going on with him. It was just like, yo, zoom in, go get me the blueprints. Like, what's that going to tell you?
He has built-in weaknesses. I don't know. I can't begin to tell you how proud I am that I have gotten you the rantiest that I have ever heard on my show. I feel so proud. I have heard you talk about many things. You have never been this ranty. I am so happy right now.
I think it's because I honestly think it's because most of the time when I get ranty, it can be about what I'll say are, and it's going to sound dismissive as henshin, and that's not my intention. Rhyme, definitely not planned, TM'd. But like most of the time when I get ranty, where I tend to get ranty, it's on stuff where I say like, hey, it's got real world implications, like it's politics or heavier things, or things where you could be like, they're like, I don't want to say matter because that sounds dismissive, but you get what I mean?
Yes.
Like they've got a real world implication. This, and like, don't get me wrong, we should enjoy Toku and everything like passionately, but they also should not be it doesn't have the same weight as real life things does, and if it does, then that's a problem that Chris has with how he views things. And I say other people, like if you're treating Sentai with the same levity that you are like political issues, like real world affecting multiple people issues, then we got a problem. So, but with those, because of that, I'm like, I can't rant as much because I don't want to give people a reason not to listen, or to like, or give them a reason to dismiss anything. If I'm being ranty, if I'm being condescending,
yeah, but
when we're talking about.
When it's about something like this, it's just funny.
Oh, yeah, no. Then it's like, all right, I can go all in. I can go all in.
Just do it. Yeah. And some of you might be thinking, Nate, why are you letting Chris talk so long? Because my nominee for the WTH award is a cheat. It's the whole dang movie. This entire movie is WTH.
Yeah, no. 100%.
Why do you think the title of this episode is WTH the movie? Because
seriously,
the entire thing, there is almost no, like the few times there are quiet moments or quiet scenes in this movie still qualifies as WTH, because I'm just like, why did you stop?
Yeah.
What happened to the caffeine-induced bonkers energy? You stopped and you wanted to be a serious movie for about 3 minutes. Why?
Well, you wanted to be a serious movie, but you're not even doing any of the work for it. You're not even doing the things that would make sense for it to be serious. Like, I know nothing of, is his name Ryman?
Lama.
I just don't want to call him ramen.
Super Inframan.
Like, basically, like, I don't want to call him Mr. Noodles, but like,
wait a minute. Super Inframan.
TM.
I think I'm gonna add that to the menu at one of the restaurants on Monster Island in the film vault now.
I definitely think you need to.
Oh my gosh, why did I not think of that? So I mean, I would have if I made it plural. Inframan. Oh my gosh, all you gotta do is, anyway, I'm getting all like linguistical on this. So anyway.
But like when the movie did slow down, I'm like, it's not. It wasn't even like it was trying to do development or explain, even though it, I guess it tried to explain. I'm like, not in any worthwhile way, because I'm like, oh, okay. You're just like, oh, it's this. Where it's like, is there any reason that you know that?
Yeah.
Is there any impact from this knowledge?
Chris. Save it for the next segment, which is Minute to Henshin It. This is the part of the show where we give our final thoughts in 1 minute or less. As the guest, Chris, I defer to you. Are you ready?
All right, let's do this.
On your mark, get set, go, go, go.
honestly, what the Henshin was this? Like, I have no idea. This was so weird. A part of me really likes it. Another part of me is like, honestly, what did I do with my day? Can I just watch Zoo Rangers now?
Did you regret it?
No. In a weird way, I'm glad I did. I don't know if I'm going to do it again, because there's parts of me, like I said, that liked it, but do I like it enough to subject myself to the rest?
You got 24 more seconds.
Oh, I do? I don't know if I need them, man. It could just be more ranting. Like, seriously, how does anybody know anything about this character that was made 20 minutes ago? How does he know how powerful he is? How does he just do everything? And there's no lines of dialogue where it's like, oh, this is just coming to me like natural, like breathing or something. Like,
and time.
Seriously.
Oh, yeah, my phone actually went off a little bit there. I didn't catch it. Oh my gosh. All right, and now I'm gonna and now it's my turn. So on my mark, get set, go. Oh my gosh. Clearly I like this movie more than you do, but I blame MST3K. It has instilled an appreciation for entertainingly bad movies. I mean, come on. Godzilla vs. Megalon exists. That movie is bonkers too, but this takes it to a whole other level. And we're talking about a movie with a spontaneously growing robot and Godzilla doing a flying drop kick.
Yeah.
So it's like, seriously, all of those, the Shaw brothers just looked at all of that and they thought, hold my beer. Because that's another alternate title you could give this movie. Hold my beer.
Yeah. I think you mean hold my Zuyang Pio trademark.
There you go. There you go. And on that happy note about getting drunk to watch Super Inframan, because that's basically what this movie is to you now, right? Yeah, you're not drunk enough for this movie.
Yeah. I'm not that big of a drinker, but I mean, if you're telling me like, Chris, we'll sit down, we'll have some Zuyang Pio, we'll get some Chinese food. You know what? I might be down.
I do think that this would be a great movie to get a bunch of friends together and just have like a bad movie night. And
yes.
Get some food, get your adult beverage of choice, and just watch the madness.
I think it comes down to there's certain times with a lot of things where someone will send me something, and if I hate it, I'll just be like or not hate it, just don't like it, or I'll cite a great horrible cover. A couple of years ago, some friends of mine, Christian from my other podcast, he sent a link to us in our friend chat where it was like Puddle of Mud covering Nirvana's About a Girl, I believe.
Oh no.
And they made it through the entire thing. I got like 40 seconds in tops, and then I was out loud like, oh wait, this doesn't have to happen to me, and I just exited it. But when we're doing a movie for a podcast, I'm like, I can't do that. I actually have to. It has to happen to me.
Well, but guess what? Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, thank you.
This is much better than Puddle of Mud's cover of About a Girl by Nirvana.
Anyway, thank you for listening to the Henshin Men, a Tokusatsu appreciation podcast. You can find links to all our social media in the description of this episode. You can listen to more of Travis on the Kaiju Weekly podcast and listen to more of me on the Monster Island Film Vault and the Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise. And where can people hear you, Chris?
Well, listeners, you can check me out primarily on One Cross Radio. You can find me through most podcatchers. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. Nathan's been on a number of times. We've talked the Gamera Heisei trilogy, unmade Godzilla films. We also did like Beast Wars, Power Rangers in Space. We did one episode on my show, one episode on yours for that. You've been a frequent guest. So, listener, you get a lot of this just with other topics. You can also check out my other podcast. It's called The Radio Arcade. I do that with my longtime and dear friend Christian. That one is, I guess it's more of a politics adjacent podcast, although we don't always intend it to be that. That's just where the conversations and the rants end up going a lot of the time.
I think the premise of that show is that it's just two friends talking about whatever.
Yeah. I wanted to say slice of life, but I'm like, I don't know if that's accurate either. But it's two lifelong friends who often disagree, but disagreeing in a hopefully fun way.
Yeah,
and we have a blast.
We need more of that in the world.
Yes,
respectful disagreement. It can happen, people.
And it helps when you've known the other person long enough where you're like, all right, I know they're getting sassy, but I know they're not getting to be a jerk about it. They're not being a jerk to me yet. So, and then there's also, we do some shorts on our Instagram, 2099 OCR. Also up on our YouTube. They're called OCR Shorts, where most of the time it's about more life-ish stuff, or sometimes it's follow-up to episodes if I forgot something, and it's just under 15 minutes. So you can find me in many places.
Yes, that is sure. I'll be sure to put some links to your content in the episode description. But if you found some enjoyment from this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podchaser. And I would like to let all of you know that Henshin Men is a proud member of the Kaiju Ramen Media Podcast Network. But until next time, Chris, what are we going to say?
It's safe to say that Inframan is Kamen Rider's fraternal henshin.